So my very first point is, I'm just going to summarize it as like independent media. Is that what? Think about what we are, Charlie. Like we have an opinion. We are doing the thing. We are business owners who invest inside and outside our business, and we create content, which hopefully is educational and entertainment in nature around that thing, which means that people go, wow, you are going to be better at providing this information, or we trust your opinions and trust your viewpoints more so than if a journalist was to write about it in a newspaper or in a magazine, or if they were to cover it on, I don't know, like a generic news outlet, because a journalist isn't doing the thing. How many journalists are business owners that are talking about generating wealth inside and outside their business? Minimal. However, they'll still try and write an article about it, right? They'll still try to talk about the thing.
Can I just re-articulate that? I want to make sure I'm on the same page with it. The way I'm thinking about it, it's like direct-to-consumer media.
Completely.
This is the way I'm thinking about it, is like for us, we create something, here is the example, and we take it straight to the audience.
There is no middleman.
Yeah, where if you were going to do something, let's say with a big news organization, they're not the ones doing the things. They're watching other people do things and they're writing about it, and then they're taking it direct to consumer. So this whole independent media world has really opened up. And I love that point you just made. And I think it's really interesting, and we'll use property as the example here. It's like if you look at the AFR, how many people that write about property that are not property investors? Or aren't?
Like 90% of them.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes there's some fantastic journalism. They do create a really interesting content that maybe I wouldn't be able to do, or another property investor wouldn't be able to do. But it's fascinating, and we'll use mortgage broking as the example, is like, do I really want to read an article a journalist has written about mortgage broking? Or do I want to hear from the actual mortgage broker, like raw on what he's experiencing?
Totally. And to sort of bring your first point in, there's a mortgage broker on TikTok that just covers every change in lending, in borrowing, how that impacts first home buyers, how that impacts investment.
It's really good. I've seen the channel. I didn't know you were on it also.
Like the guy, I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is a mortgage broker, right, who does the thing, is day in, day out talking to banks, evaluating loans, getting rejected, getting approved, and he's like documenting it. There is no bias. It is what it is, right? Like it's like, well, this is how we now got lending for the person in this complete situation. And I'm like, just consuming this is 10 times better than trying to pull out a newspaper and read an article around what's the state of borrowing in Australia, because the guy's actually doing the thing. And then he'll come out with a new update. It was like, oh, well, this is what's changed. And I'm like, well, that even came out quicker than the newspaper referred to it.
The speed, right, of going direct to consumer is you could make a video today and publish it, where if it had to go through a traditional news outlet, it's a very different system. Very difficult to get that. And it opens up so many things. So how does this become an advantage for someone though, right? I dare say everyone who listens to this podcast is kind of aware of this, I'll say, trend and the advantages of it. But how do we make this something that's an opportunity in 2023?
Totally. So this, the trend that is coming through it started like a couple of years ago, where people were like, I was in this camp of going, I don't really trust media outlets. They seem to be biased one way or the other, trying to get me to do one thing or the other. Where do I go? And it's always been maybe a podcast, maybe a YouTube channel, but there was just nowhere really for people to go. And now, how many families do you know that watch YouTube at home instead of free-to-air TV? How many different people listen to podcasts on the way to work, or going for a walk to get a coffee in the morning, or these things? And so I'm like, this is the perfect opportunity for people in tiny niches. Like we just spoke about a mortgage broker, a freaking mortgage broker, where he could come out with a podcast once a week, twice a week. He could come out with a video on his YouTube channel once a week that people can go and subscribe to, where he is the go-to person for people to get information. And so instead of us sitting down watching news, for example, and then getting fed topics, us, the consumer, will go and subscribe to one about borrowing, one about what are the trends in different markets in Australia for property, to use that as an example. What are they doing for first home buyers? And then just watching and consuming that information selective to us. So it's specific to us. So the opportunity that I see is that now it's not someone trying to create generic content to hit a mass market in property, for example, dude, like people are going so micro, so specific, and others are hitting it. Others are consuming it, right? Like imagine a channel just talking about, hey, here's first home buyers, and this is what people do. Is first home buyers in a particular state or in Australia, and people who are in that area, like in that purchasing cycle, they're like, that's what I need. Consume.
All right, you're going deep on me, Grant. So the opportunity is for business owners to become their own media, direct to consumer.
Completely.
I concur in a huge way, where I don't think that was conceivable or possible. And you've got these other layers to it as well. So, like you mentioned, the behavioral ones of what people do now. They watch YouTube instead of watching standard TV in a lot of ways. And I must admit, I've never plugged my TV into an aerial since you bought it. No, don't even have one. Podcasts instead of listening to the radio has really changed, right? It's a huge thing there, but the other side of it is like, how cheap's equipment?
Oh, dude.
How easy is it now to do it? My first studio cost me like 10 grand. And I'm sure anyone who's actually in film would be like, that's what I spend on one camera, right? But the idea being is you can get a reasonable studio together like we do now for what, under 5, probably like 3 grand, you could pull something off.
Totally.
I don't see that stopping either. There's better tech continually coming where I think eventually in the next coming years, like MacBook Pro will be enough to do what we do now. And hurry up, Apple, side note.
Save me money on equipment. But I also think about it from the other side. So that's one thing for business owners that they can do right now where they can hit it. But I also think about like business to business services is like if everyone's trying to become like this sort of micro famous maybe, or this like create their own sort of form of media as a business offering services, it's like, well, what can you do to help them? Is there an additional way that you can get them more exposure? Can you help them buy equipment? Can you help them fit out their room? Maybe people need podcast studios because they don't have space at home because they've got a smaller house. Like there are so many like second and third layers outside of that going, well, if everyone's moving this way, what like the gold rush, they need shovels, they need jeans, they need places to live, they need all these other things in order for them to do that thing. I also think that like similar to what we do with like Valor Media where we go and edit people's podcasts and produce it and do all these things, I think that there are other things around it that will also become massive trends. Hey, fellow business owner, if this topic and value-packed short video has resonated with you at all, and you want to dive deeper into creating wealth inside and outside your business, check out the full episode by clicking the link on your screen or in the description right now.